For spine-chilling Skinwalker encounters revealed, terrifying tales of the cursed and sinister. Angela's heart raced as she wiped down the counter of the rundown gas station in the dead of night. There was a heaviness in the air, the kind that made her skin crawl. Every shadow in the corners felt alive. The desert stretched vast and unforgiving outside, under an ominous sky scattered with stars that seemed to watch her. Tales of skinwalkers whispered through the small town, weaving fear into the hearts of the locals. But those were just stories, she told herself, meant to scare kids and distract from their bleak reality. Right, the flickering lights had started weeks ago. She dismissed them, chalking it up to the station's age and her own exhaustion. Yet every night was the same light sputtering, shadows that darted behind her just out of sight. It was the desert, after all. There was madness in the stillness, a lurking dread fed by the stories that reverberated around town. Angela forced her mind to focus on Jake, her 16-year-old son, who had been wandering further into the night with his friends. Each trip home seemed to chip away at him, leaving behind a shell with scratches marring his arms, a serene yet eerie aura about him that sent a shiver down her spine. There was a point when Angela realized the whispers weren't just local legend. Those odd gatherings she began to notice among her neighbors, murmurs filled with urgency and fear that crept under her skin. One evening, the gas station closed, and she took a different route home, pulled by an unseen force. It led her to a secluded spot under the crescent moon. What she found left her breathless, a circle of familiar faces, each twisted in ritualistic intent, chanting in a dark language that sent chills down her spine. Panic surged through her veins. A gasp caught in her throat. They were calling something, summoning something. Heart pounding, she turned to flee, but they felt her there, and she could feel the weight of their eyes like an anchor. Sinister laughter broke the nighttime calm as the shadows danced and shifted, growing closer. The horror she'd thought was mere folklore suddenly felt real, and she felt trapped, tangled in a spider's web of fear. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Each step away felt heavier. She had to get home, had to check on Jake. Yet doubt gnawed at her. What if her son had fallen into their grasp? What if the desert's shadows were already pulling him deeper into their nightmare? The community she once trusted transformed under the weight of ancient secrets, and each familiar face now bore the marks of suspicion. Dawn's first light painted the horizon, revealing nothing but the harsh desert. As Angela drove home, exhaustion begging for release, a voice sliced through her thoughts. Mom had called from outside, but it wasn't the Jake she recognized. Panic gripped her heart as she turned toward the darkness beyond the door. His voice felt off, fractured, echoing with something unholy. She stood frozen, the line between her son and a presence she couldn't comprehend wavering before her. With shadows still lurking behind her, Angela faced a furious decision. Would she confront the horror seeping into her life or flee into the encroaching dawn, leaving everything she loved behind? Angela's breath caught in her throat as she stared into the darkness. Jake's voice, once a soothing lifeline, now echoed like a warning bell, chilling to the bone. Mom had called again, each syllable clawing at her resolve. She could barely make out his figure past the door, a silhouette tangled in shadows, the pale light casting an otherworldly glow over him, twisting the familiar into something alien. Jake? She managed, her voice trembling. It emerged more as a whisper than a question, thick with dread. What was her son doing out there? Why wasn't he coming inside? The fear heavy in her chest surged, like a tidal wave ready to sweep her under. The darkness just beyond the door stirred. Was that movement? A twitch in the shadows that should not be there? She edged closer, her heart hammering in her ears. You need to come in, she pleaded, her words strained. But instead of stepping forward, he simply cocked his head, a strange smile curling on his lips, one that felt so wrong, so out of character. Her insides twisted. Without warning, he lunged forward, slamming his palm against the door. The sound echoed loudly, a challenge or perhaps an invitation. She jumped back, heart racing, the old wood shuddering under his weight before settling into a deafening silence. "Mom, I'm fine, really. Just let me in." His voice drew her in, but she could hear the undercurrent, a coated layer of something sinister laced between his words. Panic clawed at her throat. What if it was not her son at all? What if he wasn't he alone? The stories she tried to dismiss came crashing back like the swarming shadows. Skinwalkers. Angela's mind raced, her instinct screaming at her to act. She glanced around the small gas station and spotted an emergency baseball bat hanging on the wall, a relic of a safer time. She snatched it up, clutching it like a lifeline. It felt flimsy and inadequate, but it would have to do. "Jake, if you're really in there, you need to prove it. You know we can't be out so late. You promised." Her voice quivered, a mix of authority and desperation. The figure paused, the smile fading into something darker. "Mom, I don't want to play games, just open the door." His eyes glinted, a flicker of something familiar buried beneath an overwhelming horror that threatened to consume her entire being. Every instinct screamed to run. Fear wrapped around her throat like a vice, but she had to fight, if not for herself, then for him. She took a step towards the door, her hands trembling around the bat. "Prove you're my son, say my name," she yelled. Angela, the name rolled off his tongue, too smooth, too sweet. That was not how he said it. For a split second, doubt gnawed at her. Could it be him? But the flickering lights overhead clicked ominously, casting fleeting shadows that revealed faces behind him, neighbors, twisting in mockery, laughter bubbling from between cracked lips and hollow eyes. She thrust the door open, prepared to confront whatever it was standing before her. But the sight sent chills down her spine. The once familiar face of her son stood twisted, skin taut, a grotesque mask of what Jake used to be. Some over the horizon began to stir, darkening clouds rolling in with an unholy intent. The laughter grew louder, and the air thickened with the pungent scent of decay. The night thrummed with a sinister energy, charging the air between them. Then, out of the chaos, Jake lunged toward her. But not alone. From the depths behind him, shadows rose, writhing and spilling forth like smoke. Figures, barely human, twisted by the desert's curse, emerged. Skinwalkers. Angela froze, her heart pounding so loud it seemed to drown out everything else. "What do you want?" she cried out desperately, knowing the answer would seal her fate. In response, the shadows danced closer, reaching out with long, grasping fingers that glinted, something dark beneath their skin. And then Jake's voice echoed again, low and distorted, "Mom, come play with us." The darkness loomed closer, invincible. Angela's mind went blank as fear consumed her. As she stepped back, she stumbled. And fell onto the ground, staring up at the horror unfolding before her. The inevitable had begun, and escape was fading fast. What were they summoning into the world, and could she survive the unraveling nightmare? Angela's pulse raced as she hit the ground, the cold earth sending shockwaves through her body. The skinwalkers surrounded her, grotesque forms writhing in the dim light, their laughter intertwining like twisted echoes through the night. Panic surged, and she fought against the cold grip of hopelessness. "Jake!" she screamed, scrambling backward. The shadows edged closer, their hollow eyes gleaming like dark stars. If he was in there somewhere, the real Jake, she had to reach him. She swung the bat wildly, the wood slicing through the air, a desperate attempt to fend off the monsters that impersonated her son. "Let him go." She slashed at the empty air, desperate to connect with something. The skinwalkers hissed, recoiling slightly as if burned by her defiance, tongues flicking out like venomous snakes. But Jake stepped closer, his frame contorted by darkness. "Mom, please stop this," he uttered, and it was his voice, yet every word was tainted. You're hurting them. Hurting them? Horror clawed at her heart. Jake, they're not my son. They're not real. The smile that danced on his lips wasn't a smile at all, it was a grimace, an invitation into a world she was too terrified to enter. The shadows squirmed, hungry, aching for her surrender. She had seen enough horror movies to know this was the moment when the innocent had to choose between blind trust and self-preservation. With a surge of adrenaline, Angela heaved herself up, propelling herself to the nearest wall of the gas station for support. Nestled in a corner was a mismatched shelf that cluttered clumsily. She reached for a bottle of engine oil, grabbing it as she turned, intending to make her stand. Jake! I love you. You have to fight it. The words ripped through the air. She hurled the oil towards the figures, it splattered like a treacherous rain. The Skinwalkers screamed, a cacophony of shrieks that pierced the night, their forms flickering uncertainly as if the oil sizzled against them. But Jake didn't recoil. Instead, he surged forward, his expression twisting, disgust mingled with anger. Mom! Stop! He was drawing closer, and she could see something flickering beneath the horror. Angela choked back fear, remembering the stories, the power of a true name. If only she could reach the part of him that still existed beneath this nightmare. Jake! She called again, voice hoarse. Jake, tell me your favorite place in the world. His face twisted. Stop, just let it be. No. Tell me. Grandma's lake. The answer struck her like a lightning bolt. The lake. Something within flickered behind his uncanny gaze. Jake, remember that day? The sun glistening on the water, the laughter, and how we splashed each other? For a moment, hesitation crossed his face. The shadows snarled and trembled. It's not me. I know you are still in there. Fight them. Her words ignited a flicker of humanity in his eyes that stammered against the encroaching shadows. The Skinwalkers shrieked, drawn into a vortex of chaos, twisting and shifting as if they struggled with an unseen force. But from behind the inky wave of darkness, more figures gathered. She could see others, twisted forms of those who had vanished, faces she recognized twisted into grotesque expressions of despair. What had they been before they surrendered? Would they remember? Suddenly, Jake screamed, collapsing to his knees, holding his head, straining against the darkness. Mom, help! The ground began to crack beneath the Skinwalkers' confluence, the energy erupting in violent bursts around them. Angela swallowed her fear, ready to charge, the bat a lifeline swinging above her. But then it happened, the ground split open, and in that small moment, a brilliant light burst forth. It blinded them, bathing the nightmare in hope, scattering shadows like ashes on the wind. As the chaos surged, Angela realized it was not over. Could she save him, or was he already lost? Was this light meant for them both, or was it withholding a final farewell? The tension hung thick in the air as she watched the horizon flicker ominously. What power lay beneath the unforgiving ground? What truth remained to be revealed? Jake! She shouted again, the urgency in her voice sliced like a knife, resonating with both love and fear. Would this light guide her to salvation or towards a fate darker than the shadows? Angela took a deep breath, heart racing. What came next would change everything. The blinding light pulsated, a fierce beacon challenging the darkness. Angela squinted, fighting through the harsh glare, trying to focus on Jake. His body trembled as the shadows recoiled, but the Skinwalkers weren't finished. They screeched and flailed, reaching with clawed hands, unwilling to concede. Mom! Jake's voice wavered, cracking under the strain. He was still there, buried deep. Beneath the monster's disguise, amid the horror, she could still see fragments of her son. A flicker of hope ignited within her chest, but doubt clawed at her mind. The earth roared underfoot, erupting with sharp cracks. The Skinwalkers writhed like blades of grass in a storm, a pitiful display of rage and hunger. One of them broke free from the chaos, its eyes fixated on her. It lunged, mouth gaping to reveal rows of jagged teeth. Angela didn't think. She hurled the bat, a desperate last-ditch effort. It struck true, making contact with the creature's head. A sickening crunch echoed, and the Skinwalker faltered, collapsing into a twisted heap. But her victory was short-lived. As the light flickered, the multitude of wails rose, growing louder, more frenzied. "Jake!" Angela cried, taking a step forward, the creature's stench of decay wrapping around her. She could not lose him. Not now. From the corner of her eye, she saw the other figures, those familiar faces contorted in agony, each one chained to the darkness that had swallowed them. They reached out, mouths opening and closing in mimicked cries. "Angela, help us!" The words blurred together, a haunting echo that made her skin crawl. It was tempting, so very tempting, but she could not succumb. "No!" she shouted, focusing on Jake, channeling everything into him. "You have to fight. Remember the lake." Jake's eyes widened, a brief moment of clarity breaking through the despair. "Mom! I can't. They won't let me." The shadows coiled, tightening around him, hungry to snuff out the last remnants of hope. Panic seized her heart. The ground shook once more, hurling debris into the air as if the earth itself was revolting against the horror contained within. Angela stumbled, biting back a scream as she steadied herself. "Stay with me, Jake," she urged, scrambling through the chaos. "You're stronger than they are. You have to be." The shadows hissed, circling him like a hellish storm. Jake's features darkened, merging with the true horror that surrounded him. But she refused to stop. She reached for him again, desperate. "Hold on to me." The light flickered, dimming perilously as the spectral figures lurched forward. One lunged past, grasping at her wrist. A shriek erupted from its gaping mouth, a face that had once belonged to a neighbor, now a haunting mask of desperate rage. Angela recoiled, heart racing. She couldn't let it take her. She had to break free. "Jake, please." With every ounce of strength, she forced her memories to the forefront of her voice. The stories Grandma told us. The stars shining above the lake. The nights spent together laughing. As if triggered by the familiarity, the shadows rippled. For a heartbeat, the connection flickered back to Jake. His expression twisted in confusion, the conflict waging war within him. Her words sparked a battle that seemed almost tangible. The ground boomed again, the light fighting against a pull of sheer darkness, and Angela's breath hitched. "Mom, I'm trying." In that instant, the shadows surged. A chorus of screams erupted around her, wild and frenzied, but the light was threatening to dim. This battle was far from over. Could love truly conquer this nightmare? Her pulse thundered. Angela could feel time stretching, dragging, as fear gripped her heart. Would this moment prove to be their salvation or their doom? "Mom! Help!" Jake's cry pierced the cacophony, fading into an echo as the light began to flicker erratically. Angela clenched her fists. "I won't give up on you, Jake." But suddenly, an echoing voice broke through the torment. The shadows froze, and her heart plummeted. It wasn't Jake. "Leave now, or suffer." The ground cracked open wider, dark tendrils reaching towards her, wrapping around her ankles like cold steel. Her breath caught, panic bubbling up as the echoes of the lost swirled around her. What's happening? The ground was shifting, swirling into chaos. Angela glanced at Jake, whose expression seemed locked in a titanic struggle as shadowy hands began pulling him back into the void. "Mom, don't. Get away." Could she save him, or was it truly too late? As darkness swallowed every flicker of light, a horrifying thought gripped her. If she stayed, could she join him in this blank abyss, or would she be forced to face the Skinwalkers alone? The shadows coiled tighter. Angela screamed, grappling with the fear coursing through her veins. What choice did she have now? And as the last glimmer of light vanished, she felt a chill seep into her bones. What reality awaited them now? Angela's mind raced as shadows tightened their grip on her. The ground felt alive, writhing beneath her feet as if to swallow her whole. She could almost sense the cold breath of the Skinwalkers, hungry and bitter, hovering close by. With every heartbeat, dread seeped deeper into her bones, mixing with the desperation to reach Jake. "Come back to me," she screamed, her voice cracking, just as the darkness pulsed around her. Each pulse felt like a heartbeat of the earth itself, angry and insatiable. Was this what it felt like to descend into madness? The voice echoed again, mocking her resolve. "Leave now or suffer." It seemed to swirl through the chaos, a chorus of torment, reverberating through every fold of the darkness. With a surge of courage, Angela grasped the memories of laughter and warmth, of her son playing by the lake, splashing in the water with joy. "Jake! We can't let them win." She fought against the shadows, her voice a lifeline in a sea of despair. She refused to let the Skinwalkers take him, but as she called out to him, Jake's face flickered. In a heartbeat, she saw him, truly him. His eyes were filled with both disbelief and terror, trapped in an endless cycle of pain that transgressed the physical realm. Then just as quickly, that flicker dimmed, swallowed again by the darkness that loomed behind him. "Mom, it's too late." The darkness loomed closer, its whispers slithering into her ears, dragging her mind toward the depths of despair. Each word felt like a serpent coiling tighter around her thoughts. She couldn't let it in. She wouldn't. In an act of sheer instinct, Angela lunged toward the pulsing light. If she couldn't save Jake, she could at least save herself from this horror. But the shadows were everywhere, grasping at her arms and legs like 1,000 icy claws. "Let go!" she shouted, struggling against the grip, but it was futile. The shadows pulled back with a force beyond comprehension, dragging her toward an unimaginable fate. Jake's anguished cry pierced the air. "Mom! No!" His voice seemed to break through the barrier of darkness that encased him, emphasizing the horror of their reality. Angela felt the world around her quaking violently, the air thick with dread. Then a shadow stepped closer, a familiar face twisted into a grotesque smile. The Skinwalker wore the face of a long-lost friend, one who had vanished years ago. "You could join us, dear Angela. The darkness is comforting. Get away." Angela hurled herself aside, the chill of its fingers grazing her skin, sending currents of terror through her veins. She spun around, searching for Jake amid the chaos. The shadows shifted like liquid, and she spotted him, slumped beneath a veil of despair. The air crackled, a violent energy sparking between them, the light flickering in response. Jake's eyes met hers, desperate and pleading. "Mom, help me." Despair pulled like gravity, heavier than anything she had ever experienced. Was this struggle truly worth it? The Skinwalkers whispered encouragement, promised peace if she would just release her grip on hope. Angela could feel the tendrils of darkness wrapping around her mind, threatening to pull her in. "No!" she cried, digging her feet into the ground. With every ounce of willpower, she propelled herself toward Jake. "I'm not leaving you." The searing light around them ignited again, scorching through the darkness. Shadows shrieked, twitching as if threatened by its brilliance. "We are endless." A scream erupted from deep in the void, echoing as if the ground itself fought back. As her fingers inched closer to Jake, her heart raced. The weight of their collective memories surged through her, emboldening her resolve. But with each breath, the shadows intensified, vexingly close to snuffing out hope entirely. The ground trembled. "You can't escape me, none can." The voice clung to the air ominously. Just then, something shifted. A rift in the darkness seemed to open, offering a glimpse of something beyond. "Angela!" Jake's voice broke over the chaos, full of desperation. "You have to choose." "What choice?" The thought resonated in her mind like thunder. Stay and fight, or risk losing herself and him forever. The shadows clawed at her, tearing at her flesh and spirit. Angela's resolve began to crack. In that moment, an unbearable truth dawned on her. "Don't let go, Jake," she shouted one last time, feeling the distance between them stretch impossibly while the darkness writhed around them. Could she shatter the ties that bound them to the Skinwalkers, or were they destined to be lost together in this eternal night? Every heartbeat thumped like a war drum as the shadows began to laugh, a horrible sound full of malice and rage. What would be left of their battle as the darkness thrummed an ominous tune? Angela felt the darkness shift, a wave of cold washing over her as if the shadows were suddenly alive, breathing in sync with her frenzied heartbeat. A menacing laugh echoed around her, slithering through the air and wrapping around her mind like a vice. "Join us or remain forever lost." The Skinwalkers cooed, their voices blending into a dissonant melody of despair. "Mom, please." Jake's cry cut through the unnerving chorus, desperate and edged with panic. She felt his fear wrap tightly around her heart, a heavy weight that threatened to crush her spirit. "Help me." She couldn't lose him. She refused, rallying her strength. Angela surged toward him, her hands outstretched, fighting against the persistent tug of darkness. The shadows lashed at her, a seething mass of despair that numbed her skin. Each step seemed to pull her deeper, every ounce of hope turning to lead in her veins. "Not today," she shouted, her resolve ignited. "Foolish woman." The Skinwalker's laughter thundered, mocking her. "Hope is a chainsaw trying to cut through solid stone." Angela squinted, determination clawing through her terror. The pulsing light around them flickered, illuminating distorted faces trapped within the void. They were souls lost to the Skinwalkers, grotesque reflections of happiness twisted into screams. A shiver danced down her spine, but she wouldn't relent. "Mom." Jake's face flickered into view again, more stable this time. "There's a way. You have to find the book." His words dissolved into a shriek as the shadows around him thrashed violently. "The book?" Angela gasped, mind racing. A memory, her grandmother's whispers about an ancient tome, written in the forgotten language of their ancestors. It could bind the darkness if she could find it. But where? "Focus on me," Jake shouted, his voice pulling her from the brink of her thoughts. "Mom, remember the old oak tree? The hidden cave? It's in there." "Yes, the tree." Angela felt clarity crashing over her like a wave. With newfound grit, she fixed her gaze on the towering oak beside the lake, a giant rooted in memories of lighter days. But the shadows writhed angrily around her, cacophonous whispers clawing at her mind. "You can't escape. You belong with us." "Shut up." With a guttural growl, Angela willed herself forward, ignoring the cold scraping of nails against her skin. She propelled herself away from the taunting voices, aiming for the tree. As she raced, the earth below convulsed, spitting up dirt and darkness. Every step was like running through molasses, but she wouldn't stop. Not now. With each stride, she chanted Jake's name like a mantra, anchoring her to purpose. The tree loomed larger, a sentinel against the chaotic storm of shadows. "Mom! Hurry!" Jake urged, now a distant scream. "They're coming." Angela reached the tree just as the darkness filled with furious laughter, the weight of countless souls pressing upon her, urging her to surrender. She scrambled around the gnarled roots, feeling for the hollow where the hidden cave lay. Her fingers brushed against something rough and cold, a stone, not part of the earth. She shoved it aside, adrenaline blurring her vision. The small dark opening yawned before her, like a mouth waiting to swallow her whole. "Angela!" The Skinwalkers' voices rose into a chilling chorus, a cacophony of fear and temptation. "Embrace the darkness." Without hesitation, she dove into the cave, belly deep into the damp earth, and stumbled forward, gasping as her instincts screamed at her. Shadows writhed behind her, desperate to drag her back into their claws. "No! I will find the book." Angela pushed further into the cave, heart racing. But would it even be enough? Out of the darkness, a chilling whisper slithered. The darkness never lets go what was waiting for her at the heart of the cave. Would the book reveal salvation, or would it become another shackle in the malevolent grip of the Skinwalkers? The damp earth closed around Angela, its clingy embrace a reminder of the danger she was fleeing. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as she pressed deeper into the darkness. The shadows seemed to pulse behind her, a living entity yearning to engulf her completely. With every heartbeat, the meaning of the Skinwalker's words twisted in her mind. What if surrendering was the only escape? Focus on the book. She muttered to herself, fighting against the doubt creeping in like the cold touch of darkness. The cave walls were jagged, slick with moisture, sending shivers racing down her spine. Stumbling forward, her hands skimmed the rough stone as she searched, feeling for any sign of the tome. Panic clawed at her throat when she realized just how alone she was, every second echoing with the distant laughter of the Skinwalkers outside. "Mom!" Jake's voice punctured through the veil of her spiraling thoughts. "Hang on, Jake. I'm coming," she shouted, her voice ricocheting off the walls. But the shadows crept closer, their whispers shifting to laughter, cold and sinister. "This is futile, Angela. You cannot save him. We will take you both." "No." She pressed on, desperation replacing fear. A glimmer caught her eye just ahead, a flickering light, dim but present. Her heart raced. The book. As she drew nearer, it became clear, a small stone pedestal cradled the ancient tome. It looked worn and fragile, as if it had been hidden from the world for centuries, dust motes swirling in the weak light casting eerie shadows. But before she could approach, a violent tremor rumbled through the cave. The ground quaked beneath her feet, and the whispers transformed into howls of rage. "You dare intrude!" Angela dove toward the pedestal, adrenaline urging her on. She snatched the book, its rough cover cold against her hands. Gulping down the urge to flee back into the darkness, she flipped it open, the pages filled with shifting symbols that seemed to writhe like serpents. Panic rose, the text was indecipherable. "Angela!" Jake's voice surged again, more frantic. "Hurry! They're coming for you. Help me!" She shouted at the book. "Tell me how to fight them." The shadows pulsed with fury, swirling around her in a violent whirlpool, and the air became an unbearable weight. She could feel the Skinwalkers crowding the cave entrance, silhouetted figures against the dim glow of the outside world. "We will feast on your soul," they hissed, voices layered like distorted echoes, merging into a horrid symphony of chaos. In one swift motion, she shut her eyes tight and whispered her grandmother's name, channeling the warmth of memories. Suddenly, a surge of light shot from the tome, illuminating the cave in blinding brilliance. The shadows shrieked, and Angela felt the darkness recede, if only for a moment. Words began to surface, familiar whispers from her childhood mingling with the energy of the book. She understood then the power was meant to bind the darkness, to cast it away, but before she could speak the words, a hand shot out from the shadows, clawing toward her. The talon-like fingers scraped against her arm, icy cold, but she jerked back just in time. "Join us," they taunted, desperation twisted into their hungry moans. "You belong with us, no." Angela screamed, the word bursting forth with strength she didn't know she had. "Get back!" The light grew fiercer, a shield forming between her and the encroaching figures. With frantic desperation, she began to chant the few words she could translate from the book. Each syllable pulsed with power, shimmering with ancient strength, but would it be enough? The howling roared around her, drowning in the rising tide of panic. As the shadows split apart with shrieks, revealing anguished faces twisted in torment, Angela felt the very ground quaking beneath her. Was this her last stand? Just then, a distant echo of a familiar cry clawed the walls. "Mom!" Jake's voice rang clear, cutting through the chaos. But what would happen to him if she faced the darkness alone? Angela seized the moment. Time hung suspended, every choice a heavy weight. Would she push deeper into the light, risking everything, even her own heart, or save Jake and embrace whatever fate awaited them both? Angela's heart pounded like a war drum, each beat echoing in her ears, drowning out the shadow's cruel laughter. She positioned herself between the book's flickering light and the unforgiving darkness, feeling the icy tendrils of fear slithering up her spine. She remembered her grandmother's tales of those who had faced the Skinwalkers and won, those who had forged strength from love. "Jake!" she shouted again, her voice cracking under the pressure of impending doom. She could almost see his terrified face behind the encroaching shadows, twisted in a mockery of her hope. "Just hold on." With the Skinwalkers closing in, an overwhelming instinct kicked in. The echoes of ancient spells swirled in her mind, half-formed phrases rising up as if uncoiling from the depths of the tome itself. She focused, letting the light fill her heart, imagining it as a beacon that could guide Jake home. By the blood of the ancients, the words flowed from her lips before she even understood their meaning. The shadows recoiled, involuntarily twitching as if struck. They hissed, their forms losing definition, becoming more mist than matter. She was gaining ground, but it wouldn't last. She breathed deep, grounding herself in the moment. By the will of the forgotten, the words tumbled out, burning hot. The shadows darkened, and a gust of wind bore down upon her, forcing her to shield her eyes. She glimpsed the writhing bodies of Skinwalkers, their faces morphing in horror, showing glimpses of their true shapes, creatures half man, half beast, and wholly evil. "They can't stand the light." A part of her screamed. But another part whispered doubts. What if she had no control? What if it was all an illusion? By the flame of the pure she summoned the memory of her son again, the way his laughter lit up their home. As she uttered the final words, a burst of warmth erupted from the tome, flaring brightly against the blackness. A wave of light surged outwards toward the Skinwalkers, illuminating their grotesque forms. The shadows bellowed, their cries echoing in rage and despair. But as the luminous tendrils wrapped around them, Angela felt more connected with the ancient power surging through her. She could see them now, truly see the souls trapped within the Skinwalkers' forms, the lost, the tormented, their pain a mirror to her own. "Release them!" she cried, feeling the chant take root. I bind your darkness." Tendrils of light stretched out, wrapping around the figures like creeping ivy, pulling them back, drawing the shadows into their own twisted depths, leaving nothing behind but the emptiness of forgotten screams. But as the creatures fell back into the dark, one figure lingered, its eyes ablaze with malice. "Foolish girl!" it hissed, the voice a guttural rasp that crawled into her mind. "You think you can erase us? The pact is made. We will rise again." Angela staggered, the weight of its threat sinking deep into her bones. The shadows were retreating, but would they truly be gone for good? She tore her gaze from the creature, focusing on the tome, praying it had more power to protect her, to protect Jake. "Jake!" she cried, her voice breaking through the silence that followed the chaos. The cave now felt eerily still, but she could still sense the dark energy lingering, waiting for a moment of weakness to seep back in. "Is everyone okay?" No answer came, just the frigid chill wrapping around her like a fog. Fear twisted in her stomach. Had the shadows taken him, too? Or had she lost her last chance to save him? Desperation flooded her thoughts. She had to move before the darkness returned. She headed deeper into the cave, the walls closing tighter around her as the dim light flickered. There had to be a way, a hidden path that would lead her to Jake, but time was slipping through her fingers, like sand thrown into a roaring wind. What lay ahead might be even darker than she could imagine. Would Jake still be waiting, or would she only find more terror? The cave whispered the secrets of the lost, and as Angela pressed on, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Hunted. Was the nightmare far from over? Angela stepped cautiously into the darkness, her heart a frenzied drumbeat in her chest. Each whisper of the wind through the narrow cave corridors sent shivers through her body. The air, thick with dread, clung to her skin, suffocating and cold. She felt eyes on her, an unseen presence lurking just beyond the reach of her flickering light. "Jake!" She called again, her voice echoing like a plea in the void. No response. Just the press of silence, pregnant with fear. As she moved deeper, the strange symbols carved into the walls caught her eye, fading reminders of a time when this cave had been more than a tomb for lost souls. They seemed to pulse in rhythm with the dark energy that throbbed around her, drawing her in like a moth to a flame. Just then, a sudden sound, a low growl vibrating from the shadows cast by her light. She froze. The growl escalated into a snarl, angry and close. Terror washed over her like a cold wave. "Show yourself," she demanded, forcing her voice to sound stronger than she felt. The shadows shifted, forming into a sinister shape. Something long and sinewy with glowing eyes watched her intently. It was one of them, the Skinwalkers. The creature's lips curled back in a snarl, revealing jagged teeth that glistened, bared and hungry. Angela gripped the tome tightly, her fingers digging into the worn leather, and she spun the pages. "There must be something else," she muttered desperately, scanning the flickering words, the incantations. The air around her crackled with anticipation, as if the cave itself hungered for her failure. The creature lunged, but she squeaked out an incantation, a phrase blurted from her lips in panic. By the light of the star her voice trembled as she remembered its power. The glow intensified, washing over the Skinwalker, freezing its motion mid-spring. The creature let out a pained hiss, its true form flickering and melting like candle wax. Just as quickly, a torrent of dark laughter poured into the cave, echoing all around her. The other Skinwalkers were drawing closer, their voices overlapping, a cacophony that twisted her thoughts. "You can't hold the light forever," one taunted, its tone dripping with malice. Unnerved, Angela stumbled back against the stone wall, the tome slipping from her fingers. She scrambled to retrieve it, feeling the weight of despair sinking in. "Where's Jake?" she whispered, desperately needing to hear his voice, but the cave only swallowed her question whole. Suddenly, she heard a faint whimper. "Mom!" It was Jake, calling to her. "Jake! Where are you?" Angela shouted, her voice cracking under the strain of fear. The tome said love was strong against darkness, but this love felt like a fragile thread, and she was terrified it would snap. "Over here." His voice was clearer now, a glimmer of hope in the choking gloom. She rushed toward the sound, adrenaline surging through her veins, but the shadows surged behind her, hungry and relentless. "You will not escape." They lunged again, swarming like a tempest. Angela felt a cold claw grasp at her ankle, pulling her back. The light flickered dangerously, and she struggled against the weight of darkness. "No! Not again." With a fierce determination, she thrust her hand forward, calling forth the power of the tome. "By the hope of the lost." A blast of brilliant light exploded from her palms, illuminating every crevice of the cave. The Skinwalkers howled in pain, their forms collapsing under the onslaught. But as the luminescence receded, a chilling silence enveloped her once more. "Mom!" Jake's voice echoed again, pleading. She rushed forward, but as she turned the corner, the light from the tome sputtered weakly. What she saw next froze her blood. A figure cloaked in shadow stood before Jake, its grinning face twisted in malicious delight, shadowed fingers reaching out to him. Angela's heart raced as she realized, time was almost up. Would Jake be lost to the darkness forever? Angela's heart raced as she charged through the cave's darkened corridors, a fierce fire ignited within her, a last stand against despair. She felt the shadows creeping closer, whispering, threatening, taunting her with promises of surrender. "You will regret this." They hissed in unison, their voices echoing, filling the cave with heavy dread. "No!" she shouted, each syllable fired with unyielding defiance. She turned toward the looming shape cloaked in darkness, a Skinwalker that mocked her every step. Jake's voice rang out again, desperate. "Mom, help me." "I'm coming, Jake." She cried, her pulse echoing in her ears, a war drum fueled only by love and desperation. She pushed on, the tome clasped tight against her chest, feeling the pulsing glow, drawing strength from its ancient power. In front of her stood the Skinwalker, an almost human form twisted grotesquely by darkness. Its face was a cruel imitation of all Angela loved. "Can't you see? You cannot save him, Angela," it sneered, eyes shimmering with malice. "Join us, and we shall offer you both peace." It reached out as if suggesting a sinister embrace. "Get away from him!" Angela screamed, channeling every ounce of strength. "Jake is not yours." Rising fury ignited her courage. With the tome held high, her voice reverberated through the cavern, "By the hope of the lost." As the words tumbled from her lips, a brilliant light erupted, blinding and fierce as if the very stars had descended to fight beside her. The Skinwalker recoiled, shrieking in agony as the glow engulfed it. Shadows hissed and twisted away, writhing in terror, but the darkness leaned heavily against Angela's resolve. "You can't hold the light forever." It was a chorus of dissonant voices, clawing for her spirit, whispering damnation, but she pushed through the noise, focusing on Jake. "Remember the lake," she yelled, memories flooding her mind, Jake's laughter dancing across sunlit waters, splashing in joy. That warmth held her steady against the cold weight of fear. Just beyond the stunned Skinwalker stood Jake, trembling yet resolute, his eyes wide and pleading. "Mom! I'm fighting, just hold on. I feel you." His voice was a lifeline, pulling her through the suffocating dark. She focused on him, the flickering determination binding them together. "Jake, I'm right here. I want to let them win." She stepped forward, unwavering as the light surged, wrapping her around him like an embrace. Angela panted, sweat dripping down her brow, heart hammering wildly as she braced herself against the encroaching shadows. "Together, we can break their hold." In that moment, the Skinwalker's grin faltered. The swarm paused, shadows momentarily still in the blinding light. It let out a chilling growl, eyes flashing with hatred. "You think love will save you? It is only a shackle that leads to pain." "No!" Angela shouted back, unwavering. "I will not let fear bind us. I have faced the shadows, and we will rise from this together." As if her words conjured magic, a warmth bloomed inside her, illuminating the darkness. With fierce determination, she raised the tome again, a shield against the malevolence pressing forward. "Let there be light." The cave shook as the shadows thrashed violently, mirrors of anguish reflecting off the walls. With an ear-splitting rattle, they began to fracture, splitting under her resolve, formation crumbling like the ash of burned pages. "Angela!" Jake cried, rising. The shadows swirled in fury, trying to reclaim their control, but she gripped tighter to the book, focusing on the connection they shared. "By the ancient ties of blood and love, I bind you." The words erupted, pouring from her soul and reverberating through the cave, a spell not just of magic but of unwavering belief and love. The shadows screamed, twisting and shrinking away, each anguished cry echoing in a final, haunting chorus before fading into the void. For a moment, everything felt suspended, then the bright light surged, an unstoppable wave washing away the dark. Angela felt the earth tremble beneath her, felt the echoes of lost souls released from torment collide. And finally, silence descended, filled with an overwhelming peace. "Mom!" Jake's voice pierced the stillness. "You did it." Tears blurred her vision as she pulled him into her embrace. Jake pressed against her, warmth flooding back into her bones. They were alive. They were together. "Are we safe?" His voice was a fragile whisper, a question laced with uncertainty. Angela pulled back, cupping his face with trembling hands. "For now, but they will always linger. We must carry the light with us." They shared a smile, a flicker of hope igniting between them. Together, they stepped out of the cave, emerging into the early dawn. The sun spilled over the horizon, promising a new day. For the first time in ages, Angela felt lighter, though shadows loomed in distant whispers. They had faced the darkness and survived. Together, they could endure. As they walked hand in hand through the desolate expanse, Angela's heart soared. They were free, but the haunting echoes of the Skinwalkers lingered, reminding her of the dangers that could resurface. Yet a flicker of determination stirred within her. "Let us make sure our stories are never forgotten, Jake. Together we can stand against the shadows." Jake nodded, understanding blooming behind his eyes. They stepped into the morning light, ready to confront whatever awaited them together, and as they walked toward the rising sun, hope shimmered against the backdrop of an uncertain future, shining almost defiant against the darkness. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this heart-stopping conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this thrilling journey. Show your support for the channel. Your engagement means everything.